Thursday, October 1st, 1942. Dear Kitty, I got a terrible shock yesterday. Suddenly at 8 o'clock the bell rang loudly. Of course I thought that someone had come, you'll guess who I mean. But I calmed down a bit when everyone said it must be some urchins or perhaps the postman. The days are becoming very quiet here. Lewin, a small Jewish chemist and dispenser, works for Mr. Crowler in the kitchen. He knows the whole building well, and therefore we are always afraid that he'll take it into his head to have a peep in the old laboratory. We are as quiet as mice. Who, 3 months ago, would have ever guessed that Quicksilver Ann would have to sit still for hours, and what's more, could. The 29th was Mrs. Van Dan's birthday. Although it could not be celebrated in a big way, we managed a little party in her honor, with a specially nice meal, and she received some small presents and flowers, rare carnations from her husband. That seems to be a family tradition. To pause for a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Dam, I must tell you that her attempts to flirt with Daddy are a source of continual irritation for me. She strokes his face and hair, pulls her skirt right up, and makes so-called witty remarks, trying in this way to attract Pim's attention. Pim, thank goodness, doesn't find her either attractive or funny, so he doesn't play ball. Mummy doesn't behave like that with Mrs. Van Dam. I've said that to Mrs. Van Dam's face. Now and then Peter comes out of his shell and can be quite funny. We have one thing in common for which everyone usually gets a lot of amusement. We both love dressing up. He appeared in one of Mrs. Van Dam's very narrow dresses, and I put on his suit. He wore a hat and I a cap. The grown-ups were doubled up with laughter, and we enjoyed ourselves as much as they did. Allie has bought new skirts for Margot and me at Bijenkorf's. The material's rotten. Just like sacking, they cost 24 florins and 750 florins respectively. What a difference compared with before the war. Another nice thing I've been keeping up my sleeve. Allie has written to some secretarial school or other and ordered a correspondence course in shorthand for Margot, Peter, and me. You wait and see what perfect experts we shall be by next year. In any case, it's extremely important to be able to write in a code. Yours, Anne. Saturday, October 3rd, 1942. Dear Kitty, there was another dust-up yesterday. Mummy kicked up a frightful row and told Daddy just what she thought of me. Then she had an awful fit of tears, so, of course, off I went too, and I got such an awful headache anyway. Finally I told Daddy that I'm much more fond of him than Mummy, to which he replied that I'd get over that. But I don't believe it. I have to simply force myself to stay calm with her. Daddy wishes that I would sometimes volunteer to help Mummy when she doesn't feel well or has a headache, but I shan't. I am working hard at my French, and am now reading La Belle Nivernais. Yours, Anne. Friday, October 9th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I've only got dismal and depressing news for you today. Our many Jewish friends are being taken away by the dozen. These people are treated by the Gestapo without a shred of decency, being loaded into cattle trucks and sent to Westerbork, the big Jewish camp in Drent. Westerbork sounds terrible. Only one washing cubicle for 100 people, and not nearly enough lavatories. There is no separate accommodations. Men, women, children all sleep together. One hears of frightful immortality because of this, and a lot of women and even girls who stay there any length of time are expecting babies. It is impossible to escape. Most of the people in the camp are branded as inmates by their shaven heads, and many also by their Jewish appearance. If it is as bad as this in Holland, whatever will it be like in the distant and barbarous regions they are sent to? We assume that most of them are murdered. The English radio speaks of that are being gassed. Perhaps that is the quickest way to die. I feel terribly upset. I couldn't tear myself away while Meade told these dreadful stories, and she herself was equally wound up for that matter. Just recently, for instance, a poor old crippled Jewess was sitting on her doorstep. She had been told to wait there by the Gestapo, who had gone to fetch a car to take her away. The poor old thing was terrified by the guns that were shooting at English planes overhead, and by the glaring beams of the searchlights, but Meade did not dare take her in. No one would undergo such a risk. The Germans strike without the slightest mercy. Allie, too, is very quiet. Her boyfriend has to go to Germany. She is afraid that the airmen who fly over our homes will drop their bombs, often weighing 1,000,000 kilos on Dirk's head. Jokes such as he'll not likely to get 1,000,000, and it only takes one bomb are in rather bad taste. Dirk is certainly not the only one who has to go. Trainloads of boys leave daily. If they stop at a small station en route, sometimes some of them manage to get out unnoticed and escape, perhaps a few manage it. This, however, is not the end of my bad news. Have you ever heard of the hostages? That's the latest thing in penalties for sabotage. Can you imagine anything so dreadful? Prominent citizens, innocent people, are thrown into prison to await their fate. If the saboteur can't be traced, the Gestapo simply puts about 5 hostages against the wall. Announcements of their deaths appear in the papers frequently. These outrages are described as fatal accidents. Nice people, the Germans. To think that I was once one of them too. No, Hitler took away our nationality long ago. In fact, Germans and Jews are the greatest enemies in the world. Yours, Anne. Friday, October 16, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm terribly busy. I've just translated a chapter out of La Belle Nivernais and made notes of new words. Then a perfectly foul math problem and 3 pages of French grammar. I flatly refuse to do these math problems every day. Daddy agrees that they're vile. I'm almost better at them than he is, though neither of us are much good, and we often have to fetch Margot. I'm the furthest on of the 3 of us in shorthand. Yesterday I just finished The Assault. It's quite amusing, but doesn't touch Jupiter Hall. As a matter of fact, I think Sissy van Marksveld is a first-rate writer. I should definitely let my children read her books. Mummy, Margot, and I are as thick as thieves again. It's really much better. Margot and I got in the same bed together last evening. It was a frightful squash, but that was just the fun of it. She asked if she could read my diary. I said yes, at least bits of it. And then I asked if I could read hers, and she said yes. Then we got on the subject of the future. I asked her what she wanted to be, but she wouldn't say and made a great secret of it. I gather some things about teaching. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think so. Really, I shouldn't be so curious. This morning I was lying on Peter's bed, having chased him off at first. He was furious with me, not that I cared very much. He might be a bit more friendly with me for once. After all, I did give him an apple yesterday. I asked Margot if she thought I was very ugly. She thought that I was quite attractive and that I had nice eyes. Rather vague, don't you think? Till next time, yours, Anne. Tuesday, October 20th, 1942. Dear Kitty, my hand still shakes, although it's 2 hours since we had the shock. I should explain that there are 5 fire extinguishers in the house. We knew that someone was coming to fill them, but no one had warned us when the carpenter, or whatever you call him, was coming. The result was that we weren't making any attempt to keep quiet until I heard hammering outside on the landing opposite our cupboard door. I thought of the carpenter at once and warned Ellie, who was having a meal with us, that she shouldn't go downstairs. Daddy and I posted ourselves at the door so as to hear when the man left. After he'd been working for a quarter of an hour, he laid his hammer and tools down on the top of our cupboard, as we thought, and knocked at our door. We turned absolutely white. Perhaps he had heard something after all and wanted to investigate our secret den. It seemed like it. The knocking, pulling, pushing, and wrenching went on. I nearly fainted at the thought that this utter stranger might discover our beautiful secret hiding place. And just as I thought my last hour was at hand, I heard Mr. Kufius say, "Open the door, it's only me." We opened it immediately. The hook that holds the cover, which can be undone by people who know the secret, had got jammed. That's why no one had been able to warn us about the carpenter. The man had now gone downstairs, and Kufius wanted to fetch Ellie, but couldn't open the cupboard again. It was a great relief to me, I can tell you. In my imagination, the man who I thought was trying to get in had been growing and growing in size, until in the end he appeared to be a giant and the greatest fascist that ever walked the earth. Well, well. Luckily, everything was okay this time. Meanwhile, we had great fun on Monday. Miep and Hank spent the night there. Margot and I went in Mummy and Daddy's room for the night so that the Van Santons could have our room. The meal tasted divine. There was one small interruption. Daddy's lamp blew a fuse, and all of a sudden we were sitting in darkness. What was to be done? There was some fuse wire in the house, but the fuse box is right at the very back of the dark storeroom. Not such a nice job after dark. Still, the men ventured forth, and after 10 minutes we were able to put the candles away again. I got up early this morning. Hank had to leave at 8:30. After a cozy breakfast, Miep went downstairs. It was pouring, and she was glad not to have to cycle to the office. Next week, Ellie is coming to stay for a night. Yours, Anne.